Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. Also, thank you for your very kind words. Obviously, it's a little hard to go on stage after a porn and after these totally overrated introduction. You heard what I'm doing. In a way, you could say my day job is executive editor at Interview magazine, which is a German adaptation of the American title that was founded by Andy Warhol. But a little longer, I've been working on this project called I Like My Style, which is an online community and a print magazine. And what I want to talk about today is basically why, well, there's been a lot of discussion about how the digital revolution is going to kill print media. And obviously, print media is in a difficult situation right now. There's every week you get news about formerly big magazines whose numbers are decreasing and decreasing. And it's kind of, well, I'd say it's kind of open what is going to develop how. But I strongly believe that there's not such a thing as a strong like antagonism, like it's either this or that. But I think there can be smart ways of combining actually different sorts of media. So I'll tell you a little bit about the history or how we started. We started with a very innocently in summer 2007. We thought it might be a interesting and fun idea to create a social network, which isn't as from the content point of view, isn't as broad and general as, let's say, Facebook, but do something much tinier, obviously, and then also focus on a certain subject. And since I've been a, you could say, fashion and style journalist for quite some time, also because we felt that to go into a social network and basically publish yourself, you need a certain amount of vanity. So it seemed to us that it would be interesting to offer a platform which is dedicated to fashion and style. And that's how we started. We didn't really have money, and from seen from now, the whole thing was kind of technically Stone Age. But we started, and after a while, we really noticed how the website grew a little bit bigger, users from all over the world would join, and so on. And then 1.5 years later, we felt that it might be interesting to do also a print magazine that was based on this website and the community that was gathering on it. And obviously people would ask, okay, you have a blog, why would you do a magazine based on this blog? And we would answer, no, it's, first of all, it's not a blog, because this is a platform that is not driven by an editorial team or one author. It's exactly, in a way, I'd say, conceptually, it's quite the opposite of what David just showed us and presented, because this is just a platform where people can present themselves and exploit their creativity or vanity or whatever it was. Apart from that, we felt that it's interesting to go, you could say, back from online to print because of basically 3 reasons. One was a romantic reason. We felt there's so much talent, beauty, imagination, self-promotional drive on that website that it would be worth well, presenting this content in a different way. Also, it felt that things online appear very fast, and also they disappear very fast. And we felt that a print magazine is something that lasts a little longer, that gives things, you could say, an extra value. The second reason was a conceptual reason. We thought that to create a magazine which is based on a website is quite the opposite of what most media did in the last years. Normally you had one strong brand, mostly a magazine brand, and then you would have their website or whatever later on. And we thought to do it the other way around is probably like what happened now. the more contemporary approach. Third reason, that's something David also mentioned, in the last years the dialogue and the discussion about fashion and style has radically changed due to blogs, platforms like style.com. The access to information is pretty global by now, and everybody who wants to have a word can have it. So we felt that to do a top from bottom fashion magazine, basically like a elite editorial team that dictates what's right or wrong, is a little old-fashioned, and we wanted kind of reverse the whole mechanism. There's been quite a lot of talk about user-generated content, and when we started working with the people, with the users from the website, we developed, or we found out different kinds of approaches to actually create user-generated content. And there's a couple of different models that I would like to introduce briefly. First of all, like the first method is activism, which basically means we would send out newsletters, calls for action to the community and tell them, okay, why don't you do this or that? It can be very silly stuff, basically, like take a photo of your new favorite shoes for spring, or present your favorite summer outfit, or something like that. We noticed very fast that to work with users from a website is basically as tough as it is to work with normal journalists or editors. People are lazy, people don't listen or read any briefings, and occasionally they're really brilliant. But you get all sorts of responses. Sometimes it's completely wrong. People obviously always think it's great what they're doing, but it can be as exhausting as rewarding. Our favorite story, which we continue in every issue of the magazine, is called Dressing Room Piracy. That's what you see here. We basically encourage our users to go to very fancy stores, try on stuff they could never ever afford, and then snap pictures of themselves in the dressing room. The stores all hate that and try to make it impossible, but we felt that first of all, it's kind of a slightly illegal but also charming approach, because obviously our users are young and often they would go buy at H&M, but obviously look at what Nicolas Ghesquière at Balenciaga is creating. So you always have this gap between what you're interested in and what you can afford. And this is kind of a way to make it work for you, at least for a couple of minutes. The second model to create stories for such a magazine I'd call accidental similarities. It's basically we would browse through the website and see that there's, well, discover patterns, basically. Lots of people who would take photos of themselves with a guitar or a keyboard, or naked with their piano. Other people who would wear masks on the photo, or show their scars and wounds, or pose with their best friend. These are, and obviously if you have a lot of people who kind of deal on the images with the same subject, you can create here, this is all the best friends. You can create stories which are completely, I mean, they're not driven by us as editors, but they just happen to be. And then, since we felt it's kind of not interesting enough, not just to print the story, the photos we find, we would always ask any user of the website if we can print her or his photo. And then for a story like this, we would also always ask, okay, what's the story behind the photo? Tell me something, or tell us something about your best friends. How did you meet? How do you spend time together? What's so special about her? So you would basically take the raw material you find on the website and then try to create a real story around it for the print magazine. Because obviously each media has its advantages, and to us it always seemed there's still, the people are more likely to read texts in a magazine than online. That might change, but we feel you have to, in a print magazine, you have to offer then what you can just find online, otherwise it's no point in doing the magazine at all. Next, and maybe core business, is outrageous individuals. These are people we would also just find on the website and probably notice they not only joined I Like My Style, but also have their own blog, are super active on Facebook or whatever. And we would approach them, tell them, hey, we really like what you're doing, we like your photos, we're interested in basically your life, and then create like personality stories around, yeah, you could say unknown people, random people we find online and then got intrigued by the beauty of their photos, the originality, the charm, the sexiness, whatever. I mean, this boy here is just a Spanish party boy. The girl with the flag is I think she got married when she was 16, lives with her husband in Las Vegas, and lives quite a boozy life, I believe. The girl down there is a conceptual or a performance artist from Paris. So it's a kind of eclectic bunch of people, but the idea was always that the people who join a website like this become stars in their own right, and we try to, reflect this in the magazine as well. This is a very different approach. It's users as editors. This is basically people that we found looked interesting or had something to say on the website, and we would approach them and encourage them to get in touch with somebody they didn't know. You could say these stories are global blind dates. We would take this guy from Toronto and that girl from Dallas and would tell them, hey, get in touch via Skype or phone or whatever, and talk about, in that case, it was dating, sexuality, and so on. And there would, in each issue, there would be one topic, like in that case, dating, and probably 3 or 4 different couples. And all of them didn't know each other before. All of them would have to come from different countries. So you would create this kind of what's in the internet already, like this global encounter. You would strengthen that a little bit and create a story for the magazine out of that. Same approach, but different story. Here we would take, like, since it's a fashion magazine, and we obviously, if you only use content that has been posted on a website, you will often have the problem that the fashion you see is not very current. It's basically last season or just vintage stuff or so on. And we felt, since people who would be interested in a project like that should also be able to see what's new, we created this format, which is backstage photos of big runway shows. Like this is, I believe, Louis Vuitton, I think, Vivienne Westwood, whatever. And ask a bunch of our users to become fashion critics for the new issue and write their comments on these photos. So you would have like, you would basically go towards, let's say, like more traditional fashion journalism, but try to give it a twist that it fits into the magazine and also makes the users and the readers and the community more active and more involved. We had, after we did this story, I think the second time we already had fashion PRs of big brands who would call us and tell us, we don't want to be in this story anymore because our users are talking badly about us or their criticism is too harsh or whatever, which I think indicates 2 things. One is that these, let's say, normal people are taken quite seriously by the industry by now. Which that's one thing, and the other is that the PRs still have a lot to learn about how to communicate in these times. That's a very different approach. This is basically trying to, because obviously this is a very, like, say, grassroots approach to fashion journalism, but also we have a lot of people who are probably future stylists, future designers, want to become models, basically are interested in the industry and want to get in touch. in a way, it's a new form, but also aspirational journalism, you could say, which is why we created different formats to basically put in touch the users of our community and the fashion industry, you could say. This format up there called close-ups, we would also always take photos from the website and have them reviewed by people from the industry, like by a fashion designer. In that case, it's by an Italian artist called Francesco Vezzoli, who's the best friend of Miuccia Prada. So it's, in a way, it is taking these photos very seriously and honoring the people who are on the photos. On the other hand, it's also getting like interesting people into the magazine who are not necessarily users. And same but different, School of Fashion. These are interviews with designers that are very much based on the idea that every famous designer started as a fashion student at some point. So we asked these designers about how their vision was shaped, basically, like about the movies they saw, the collections that really meant a lot to them. Basically, their book of references is what they asked them about. So it's a you could say, a classical interview, but the focus is a little different and more appropriate for the magazine. So that was all editorial stuff. There's, I think, something in this concept and in this project, which also, and we started noticing that pretty much when we announced that we were going to do a print magazine, that makes such a project interesting also for advertising clients and sponsors and so on, because you have, compared to a normal fashion magazine, with the combination of an online community or a social network and a print magazine, you can create direct dialogue with your consumers, and you can create collaborations and editorials which are a little like, well, they're less controlled, but also you really get in touch with the people you actually want to reach. So we were lucky enough to, like this story here, the boy with the big handbag, is a story we did with Chanel and a bunch of teenagers from New York. And for them, it was super exciting to actually be in a real fashion shoot and have like all these amazing brands to play around with. And also for Chanel was shocked when they saw it, but then they ended up really liking it, and they continued working with us because this is something they cannot really plan, and that like a big fashion house would never even go there because normally their aesthetic politics are far too rigid for that. That other story here over there is a story we did with Adidas, and they just sent us a bunch of clothes, and we sent them to a bunch of users that we thought looked original or interesting or would create interesting photos. So that's also what's happened. Also unforeseeable what the result was going to be, but something which I believe is like a strategy that brands have to be afraid of, because it goes against everything they have learned what works in terms of PR and marketing, but also something they have to get used to, because I believe that consumers are smarter and want to be involved in some way. Same goes here. This is two different stories we did with Mercedes-Benz. One in Dubai, and the other one in Florida. Like the photos in Florida were taken by a user from the website who was like this, I don't know, 18-year-old kid from Kentucky who started being a photographer, and we sent him and some friends of his with this car to Florida and told them just take some photos. And obviously this is not traditional car photography, and it also stretched well, it was a challenge, I guess, for everybody involved, but eventually it worked out, and I think if you are able to find people and brands who are willing to go as far with you, then this whole project, I think, well, it's kind of promising. So basically, yeah, like the premise of this whole little speech was this. To create this kind of stories, I think it would be hard to do it just online. On the other hand, it's absolutely necessary to have an online presence and an online platform, because otherwise it's basically two elements that form together a project, and that is something which hasn't been very profitable so far, but conceptually it's been quite challenging and enriching. So that's why we keep doing this. Thank you.